It's an honor to be here tonight and be able to speak with you. It's kind of last moment. The lieutenant dropped it on me yesterday evening. So when I checked on at noon today, I kind of took the previous PowerPoint, started working on it and getting things updated so I could give you some accurate and up-to-date information fast. As they introduced, my name's Courtney Jones. I'm a sergeant with Spanish Fork Police Department. I've been with the city for 18 years. I've been an officer for 22, going on 23 years. So I passed the age of retirement. I keep telling my wife that one day I'll retire. The goal is maybe at 30, we'll see where we're at then, or if I get tired of doing what I do, but I enjoy it. So I was told that there's people from Payson and Springville here. I don't really have any data from Springville, but I do know a few of the older guys now. I don't know many of the younger guys at those cities anymore that work for those agencies, or kind of what's going on, but I do most crime in that. I worked undercover narcotics when I'm probably back in 2004 to 2006, and that's a county-wide task force that I signed. So I've worked with a bunch of guys, and I kind of learned some things working throughout the county and even outside the state sometimes when I work narcotics. So we'll cover some of this. It's just a public safety department review for the year. It's a brief overview of what the chief presents to the city council each year. So show some of our statistical data. I added also information so you know what's going on in the city. This is just our organization chart as far as how we are. Spanish Fork is a public safety facility. So the chief of police is the director of public safety. He's over the police department, the fire department, ambulance, and then the emergency preparedness. Don Thomas is our emergency preparedness guy. He does that full time and runs with the ambulance full time. Next slide. This is a breakdown overview of our organization chart. When I started with Spanish Fork, we had 17 officers. That was 1997, and 17 officers. We are up to 30 and asking for 2 more because of our call volume, and talking about that because of the population growth. And I've got some figures to kind of show you where we're at as far as population growth. This gives you a breakdown of what we have as far as our supervisory program, and we have an administrative lieutenant who's over the code enforcement officer, our secretaries. It shows 3.5. We really don't just have half a lady running around. That's a part-time secretary. So we have 3 full-time and then 1 part-time. So that reflects the 0.5 right there. Our report management system, public information. I'm also a public information officer, so occasionally if there's something big and Lieutenant Johnson's out of town, you may see me on the news. So they don't put me on very much because I tend to break the camera. Patrol lieutenant, Lieutenant Anderson, and then we have 3 patrol sergeants currently. The ideal is around 5 or 6 officers to supervise as far as a patrol sergeant, because any more than that, they give you a handful, especially with the rambunctious kids that we have. So I say kids, you guys refer to me as a kid, but then when I get to law enforcement, I've got the 20 to 30-year-olds, and I'm the old guy now. I never thought I'd say that in the department, but. So I supervise 5 guys that rotate different schedules, and so the other sergeants help me manage when it comes to evaluation times, and then we have a total of 30 officers, like I said. And then our investigative sergeant that handles 1 full-time detective that handles most of the caseload, and then we have SRO is basically school resource officer. So that is an investigator that is assigned to work at the high school. We have the 4 high schools in Spanish Fork, so they cover 2 each apiece, but they're assigned full-time. One's at Spanish Fork High full-time, one's at Maple Mountain High full-time, but each one of those is assigned either Landmark or ALA, the American Leadership Academy, to handle that. Then we have a city narcotics officer and major crimes. Major crimes is the county-wide task force. That's what I was assigned to. So officers from every agency in the county, with the exception of Payson, Santaquin, and Salem. They're the ones that don't have anybody in the task force at this time just because of their size. Oh, Mapleton, I forgot about them as well. So most of the big cities have them. All the other in the north end, they all have an officer in that. But it's kind of nice to, because we get federal funding to operate that system through the major crimes. So that's why we have an officer in major crimes. We just started a K-9 program. This is our K-9 that we just got a year ago. Corey Grover, who's been with us about 4 years now, is our K-9 handler. We are attempting to get a second one because we've had such great success with this K-9. This is a picture of Lord is his name. So when we tell people the Lord is after you, okay? So he's actually a really good narcotics dog, and I put the bite suit on, or the bite sleeve. I had my 21-year-old daughter put the bite sleeve on one day, and she wasn't a fan of that. She didn't like the dog grabbing her. I mean, when they bite really hard, and they want to tear your arm off. So some of the things that we've gotten a lot of positive responses from him. This is Lord barking, so if you see that coming after you when you've been naughty, that's what happens. So, yes. And this dog, he is a Malinois. Anybody, if you know about Belgian Malinois, they're usually leaner and a little faster than Shepherds, but he's really big for being a Belgian Malinois. So when he leaps through the air to bite, he hits real hard. He is a big dog, so he hits very hard. So he's found 3 suspects. One was in Payson. They had a kidnapping in Payson, and our canine happened to be the only one on at the time. He responded, and he located the suspect, and basically he was hiding in a boat, and the dog had located him in the boat, and they got him out. And so Corey Grover told him, you got one of 2 options. You can come out and give yourself up, or I send the dog in after you. So if that was your option, you'd probably turn yourself in. CART is an operation that our detectives work on. It is a child abduction response team. So if we get a missing child or an abducted child, we have a task force in place throughout the county that officers from each agency respond. I used to be a member of CART when I was an investigator. And if we get a missing child for whatever reason, we don't know, suspicious or otherwise, they may have just wandered off, then we activate CART. And so each detective has a specific assignment that they follow through when CART is activated. So it's kind of nice because the one thing I love, I worked, as I was telling the people at my table, I worked in Midvale for my first year of law enforcement in the early 90s. And I had a good friend that retired from Sandy Police. The difference between Utah County law enforcement and Salt Lake County law enforcement is each city up there basically does not play well with the other cities. If you go over the boundary, they get a little upset. Down here, it's completely different. It's like a joint team effort. It's like we have one metro police department. You can call up the local agency, say, hey, I need to come over and pick up a guy in your city. Great, come on over. We'll help you out. We'll meet you. Everybody works really well together, so that's kind of nice. And it's programs like this CART that have been instrumental, and I think, in the Major Crimes Task Force and working well, and even the Metro SWAT team. So, I mean, it's kind of nice to have those features, be able to work well and help out. And our officer-involved shooting protocol is the same way. Officers from each agency, you know, if a police officer is involved in a shooting incident, then officers from every agency, as well as the county attorney's office, respond to investigate that. Public information, these are some of the sources that we utilize to get information to you as the public, and then meetings such as this. So we have Spanish Fork Cable Network, which is very valuable to us. We've utilized that as far as releasing information. We try to educate. We just had new laws as far as the city ordinance previously, and then the state law, the OHVs, the side-by-sides operating on the roads. So we tried to get that information out initially when it was just a city ordinance of what those regulations were and where you could operate. We update the public on things. Public service announcements, we have a DVD machine in the foyer that we constantly have playing, showing some of the things that we like. We do the public presentations. There's several of them that we operate. DARE, drug abuse. We'll get called to church meetings and things like that to talk about neighborhood watch, safety, anything you can think of. We talk to preschoolers all the way up to I don't know, whoever. Okay, Twitter accounts. I don't have a Twitter account, believe it or not. Everybody in the department teases me because I haven't got one. Maybe I should. We use that because with the younger generation coming up, they're kind of the cyber generation. That's how they communicate. They communicate through Twitter and Facebook, so we utilize that. We just got our new Facebook account going so we can communicate with the public through these other social media forms as well. And then community alerts, we also utilize that. We'll use radio as far as Amber Alerts if we have an abducted child, but there's certain protocol that have to be met to utilize that. Oh, there's no picture on it, is there? Should be a picture. Hit enter again. There we go, just keep going through. There's a series of pictures. These are just some of the pictures. This is Officer Sheriff teaching DARE. That's Officer Grover, the canine, giving a tour of the police department in our evidence locker area there. Officer Grover again. All right, DARE program. I actually forgot to update the names on this, so some of these officers aren't teaching DARE anymore, but they all have. Officer Sheriff has taught DARE for 16 years. So that's a long time to teach DARE. DARE is actually a great program. It gets us into the schools and helps us to communicate with the kids. The ironic thing is some of the officers who have taught DARE and then gone into narcotics later say, well, I've met some of my DARE students out on the job. So it doesn't work for everybody, but it does allow us to get to be able to, even if we help one child out, it makes a difference. You know, and if that one child goes home and tells their family, and it can change. I've seen that when I would go into a house and you see these kids that you just feel like have no hope because both parents are drug addicts and they live. I mean, we hauled 2 children, small children, one was 2 and one was 6 months, had to be life flighted to primary children because they were higher on marijuana from their parents and friends smoking in the house. But I've seen kids come out of houses like that and turn their lives around and have nothing to do with it. So you do and can make a difference by some of the things that we do. So that lists the schools that we currently have in Spanish as far as the elementary where we teach DARE. So we teach from the beginning of the school year to the end, and they teach in 2 different blocks. So we have to pull officers off the street that would normally be taking calls, and they teach DARE. They don't get any raises or any special recognition other than, you know, later on, it's just something that they get that recognition of being able to touch the lives of some of those students. Twitter feeds. This just talks about a little bit of the Twitter. Most of you are familiar with Twitter? You guys know what it is? All right. I've seen a couple smartphones out on the table. So if you have a smartphone, then you could have a Twitter account. Basically, it's just somebody can post something on a little tweet, and if you follow Spanish Fork Police Department, say for instance we have, last night we had a lady with Alzheimer's that wandered off and had been gone for about an hour and a half. So she'd left in shorts and a t-shirt and it was getting dark. So something like that, we would send out a tweet, or we have the city call system where we send out phone numbers. So we would try to hit everybody in the general vicinity with either a phone call to their house, or we would tweet that information out, or try and post that on our Facebook page. So if you have that and you don't know how to utilize Twitter or Facebook, get with somebody who does and take a class or learn how to use that social media, just so that we can help get information out to you and you can relay it to us and we can share that as well. Okay? All right, this is just showing a picture of the web. This is not our Facebook. This is actually the city's web page here that shows that. Next picture. This one is a picture of what our web page. So it's Spanish Fork City Public Safety, Spanish Fork Public Safety. There's one there that's Spanish Fork Police. We did not put that website up. So if you see things on there, it's probably not us. Somebody else put that on Facebook. But we have Spanish Fork Public Safety as ours. But we do post things like reminding people that, you know, we're going to be red tagging vehicles because snow's coming and we need you to get off the street. Years ago we had the ordinance where you couldn't park during the winter time. So we had to get out and red tag a lot of cars. We did away with that from the council, and so now we just wait until cars have been parked. So if we drive around the neighborhood and see cars with lots of snow, then we issue red tags and try to get those moved. All right, index crime comparison. So what this is this shows a breakdown of our major crimes. So specific crimes are reported to the FBI statistical database. And this is an overview of the major crimes that are reported. It's not all crimes, but it kind of shows you a trend of the things that have happened in the past from 2010 to current in 2014 and where we're at. So crime can kind of fluctuate. I think when you look at where we're at from 2010, total major crimes 966 to 668, we have a lot of younger officers. And the trend with younger officers is they're very aggressive and proactive patrol. Proactive patrol is they get out and they find criminals before they have the chance to commit crime. So they're arresting drug addicts, they're arresting burglars and rapists and things like that before they have that opportunity to do that. So reactive is we get the call that somebody's house has already been broken into and that they want to file a report. So that's kind of the difference. And I love the enthusiasm of our newer officers because they have really turned things around and been proactive on trying to do things. Some things you can't control, like the aggravated assaults. People get drunk, they get fights, they get upset with one another, and then they tend to have problems. Burglaries, it's tough with 30 officers, which of those 30, only about 18 of us are actively patrolling the streets. So when you take how big Spanish Fork is, we need you as the public to be our eyes and ears. If you guys don't call us and immediately report that you saw a suspicious vehicle right now, instead, a lot of times, believe it or not, 90% of the time somebody will call the next morning because they didn't want to bother us at 2 o'clock. Well, we work 24/7, holidays included, 365 a year. So please, if you see something suspicious, call us immediately. Okay? We are happy to respond because we would rather deter crime and catch somebody before it happens than respond and have to investigate it later. It's actually much harder to try and investigate something later than to stop it and prevent it before. So thefts kind of stay consistent. They bounced out, but auto thefts this last year have been really, really busy for some reason. I don't know why we've had more cars, but I will tell you, of those 26 cars, probably 90% of those, the keys were in. So take your keys out of your cars. Don't leave any valuables in the vehicle in plain sight, because what happens is our Auto people, November, because we had real nice weather this year, it wasn't a normal November, we had a huge influx of Autobergs, more than ever in November, and it was attributed to the warm weather because criminals hate cold weather. You know, we as officers like that January, February, because we get a break from doing auto burglaries because they don't come out. They go inside and stay there. You know, and the nighttime's longer, and I always used to say that criminals are like cockroaches. They only come out when the sun goes down, and they go back home when the sun comes up. So with winter time, we have longer nights, but it's colder, so they don't like to come out. All right, let's talk about population growth. So the population, according to the census in 2010, was 34,691. Estimated in 2011, 35. And then if you jump up to January of last year, it was 36,924. Okay? We're probably closing in on about 40,000 right now, so that can give you an idea. When you look at the crime rate in 2010, 2011, it was higher, but yet our population base has grown and the major roads have gotten better, or more active, I guess you could say. Anybody drive down 1000 North and regret going down there at this point? My wife says she works here in town and she won't even go down 1000 North during business hours because she says it's too crazy. I only drive down there because I have to when I'm working. So our population base is growing, and I'll show you some pictures here of some of the things. So these are the current residential development projects that are going on in Spanish Fork. You have all the others. I know the print might be kind of small on some, but even right up there at the very top, that Meadow Creek Ridge phase, that's a new development right off Highway 51 going into Springville, the old State Street. That's going to be by that in commercial development. There's a bunch more small houses going in there, and then all that up there by Maple Mountain High School. We have huge developments up in that area, plus some smaller ones still filling in. It seems like when I started in Spanish Fork, I built my first house at 1600 East, just south of Canyon Road. And I was the last house in the field. So that winter, I couldn't get out of my garage. The drifts were clear to the top. I had to go to Mapleton, borrow my grandma's tractor, and dig it out so I could get my car out of the garage. But now, I feel like if I lived in that same old house, I would be like a West Sider. Yeah. That whole area is filled in, and we still have all these vacant fields up in here that are continuing to fill. And our annexation, if you look, the broken line is everywhere that we would be. In fact, we'll be going down further eventually. The future annexation goes clear down into 8800 South, River Bottoms area, so we would suck in that. And who knows what happens to the west of I-15 down the road. But the city has the potentials for growth, and we continue to grow. So it's like my wife and I have said, my family owns some property in Holden, and those that you were mad, that was my dad's that he killed this past year. Holden, that's where I want to move and retire to, because this keeps growing too big for me. I like a break from all that chaos a little bit from doing what I do. Go to the next one. All right, this is the retail development that's going in. And this is what's kind of helped us as public safety to be able to branch out, because you can't get a tax base to operate a city based on residential. So cities that, and you got to hand it to Dave Euler and the rest of the crew down there for doing what they've done over the years as far as managing things and balancing that between residential and commercial, because Costco alone was able to get us one additional officer. And it's not that cheap to start up a new officer, because by the time you get all the toys and gadgets that they require us to have now, the big media push right now is body cameras, so we've had to invest in those, and those are coming. So everybody wants us to wear cameras everywhere we go, and so that costs money, but all these businesses bring that in. So if you look at here where Walmart's going, and all that area above that is all retail, and that big vacant field right up there in the north is where a future hospital will be going. So IHC is going to be coming into that area, and they're doing a hospital about the size of Riverton, but it'll be like a trauma one hospital, so they can handle the emergency stuff coming out of the canyon when we have major accidents and such down there. So this development, that's that chaos zone. This is the area you want to avoid if you don't have to go in there unless you need something for sure. But that's some of the development that we're dealing with in the call volume. I did a study on Walmarts alone, and when you take all the Walmarts in Utah County and divide up the number of calls, Orem's was the busiest as far as police response, but on average, we expect to take a minimum of 1 call a day at Walmart. So that's our average. So right then and there, when you look at that, I mean, we're going to, with those other businesses in, most of the smaller ones like Five Guys and Zupas, stuff like that, we may respond to once a month, maybe. So, and that's usually because somebody locked their keys in their car. So, but the other stores, retail stores are going to bring some more business, but that intersection right there is a bad intersection. With increased traffic, we'll be investigating a lot of accidents. So, all right, caseload. So we talked about caseload. This is where we're at as far as 2013. The number of cases that we handled as far as investigated in 2013 was 21,435 with 28 officers in that year. So you break that down, that's 665 cases that each officer has to handle. The national average is 500. So 500 cases that each officer. So you can tell that we are kind of, even though we're still behind. Utah is kind of abnormal as far as when you look at national averages as far as law enforcement. We are behind the rest of the nation. So Utah's like 1 and not even quite 1.5 officer per 1,000 people, whereas the rest of the nation is anywhere from 2 to 3 officers per 1,000 people. So we're behind, but we tend to have a lower crime rate. So that's a nice feature. But we handle more calls, and so we've always kind of been that way. With Spanish Fork, they say, hey, we expect you guys to handle a higher call volume until we can get stabilized. So most of the cities are kind of that way. I know Payson's understaffed for what they have. Their call volume, they need more officers. Because you get into times. The incredible thing about law enforcement is we can have 4 hours of just peace and quiet, and then at a moment's notice, we can have 10 major calls come in all at once. We had our awards banquet last week ourselves, where we hand out awards, and it had been quiet for 2 hours. We all went to change to get in our Class A uniforms, our dress uniforms, at 6 o'clock and head to dinner at 6:30. No kidding, at 6 o'clock as I was headed down, we had 3 accidents, all at the same time. One of them required ambulance. So that's kind of how the cookie crumbles. Mine ended up being hit and run. I just told my wife I just finished up on it tonight. I tracked down the other driver and got it taken care of. So 2015, we estimate the call volume to go up to 25,100 if we stay in projections on what it's done in the past. So this is where the chief's looking to try to get that up to 32 officers to be able to help, and that additional canine. It has been a blessing for us. In fact, our canine has spent as much time in Spanish Fork as it has in Payson and Springville and Mapleton helping them out. Like I said, they ended up apprehending that kidnapping suspect in Payson that one day. So he's been out quite a bit and done a really good job and been excellent. The ambulance currently has 38 members. They're volunteer, divided into 12 shifts. The shifts are divided into day shift and night shift. They staff 2 ambulances 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. When needed, they have a 3rd ambulance that can be called out. So there have been occasions where we have actually had to call in 2 additional cities to help us out at the same time. There was one night where we had all 3 of our ambulances out, our backup and our 2 main, and then we called Salem's ambulance and Mapleton's ambulance to go to 2 other types of calls. That's how busy it got. So you just never know what's going to happen. So I know that down the road they would like to be able to get full-time crew members or half-time, but I don't know when that would take place. Again, that's with funding. So as you see developments come in and growth, we even beg for more car dealerships because the tax base is higher, so it helps relieve some of that. So, not that, you know, if we keep them down at the north end of town where they're at, that's good, but they actually do bring in a higher tax base that helps you out with to cover some of those fees. So, the nice thing is about the volunteers do a great job, but then the full-times get more experience and they have a little bit higher training. You know, I've got a lot of brother-in-laws and family members that are paramedic firefighters full-time for other cities, and they do respond on a lot more calls and get a lot more training and required schooling. But our ambulance crew members are great. In fact, officers are out and about, so because they're on call, we're usually first on scene. So, you know, we do a lot of life-saving measures. I actually have 2 life-saving awards. That's what the 2 red pins are on the lower part is. We had a citizen donate AED, automatic external defibrillators, to the city years ago. We have utilized those more times than I can count. We've probably saved 30 lives with those defibrillators responding on scene. So they've been a blessing for us as well. We get there quick, we're able to utilize those. Ambulance statistics, this kind of breaks it down as far as the call volume. Like I said, you've always got that roller coaster and billing. So we're still, I know that Obamacare is changing. Everything's kind of prorated that way. So it'll be interesting to see how things really affect going into 2015 and the rates. But you can see how they've climbed. And I remember an ambulance ride when I first started in law enforcement was like $300. Now it's like $1,000 for riding an ambulance call, it seems like. So I'm like, I don't know. I didn't think gas was that high, but yeah, it's gone up. It's gone up quite a bit, so we'll see if that drops with the gas prices. So I don't know if it will. Ambulance calls by day. Ambulance calls, interesting when you look at that. When we look at comparison as far as traffic accidents, they're highest in the peak hours of commuting. So from about 2 o'clock to about 6 o'clock in the afternoon is our worst time for accidents. But, believe it or not, don't drive on Monday. That's the day you want to stay off the road. That's one of our highest accident days. But the ambulance calls are pretty consistent. It's just, it seems like all days of the week. People don't call the ambulance on just Sunday or Saturday. They're pretty consistent. Time of day, more towards the evening. I don't know if people get home and stressed from work and then eat dinner and have a heart attack. Because you got quite a high volume there around 6 and 7 o'clock. So unless the cook's putting a lot of spicy food in there. Ambulance calls by age. When you look at the age calls, you don't get a lot in the younger category because they're usually the healthiest. Occasionally we get a choking child or a sick infant that we respond on. But most parents will take the kids to the hospital, but as we get a little older into the demographic, then we get, you know, right in there into the 30, 40-year-old, 40, 50-year-old, right in the area where I'm at, believe it or not. I guess my age category calls the ambulance more than anybody. I don't know what's up with that. I can't afford to ride in the ambulance. So I tell my fellow workers, I said, put me in your car and take me to the hospital. Yeah, or I'll walk. Okay? But it breaks it down as far as the age years and ambulance call responses. Fire statistics. Now our fire department is also volunteer. Our fire chief, I think I'm not even sure if he's full-time, but he's got emergency response vehicles that he takes to work with him, and he drives.
He's full-time.
Around. Is he?
Yeah.
Okay, see, you guys know more about fire department than I do. So, that's okay. But they're unique because they respond on just about everything. They have the rescue trucks, so they help us out on, if we get a patient or something, we do have some ambulance crew members who are all female. A lot of times they'll get a patient that's down in the basement, they can't move that patient. So we as officers will respond. If we're busy and we can't respond, then the fire department sends out the rescue, and then they respond and help lift patients or do whatever they need to do that way. So this breaks it down into fire calls versus the rescue calls. So fire calls are carbon monoxide alarms, fire alarms, house fires. Last year, I think we actually had more house fires than we'd had in ages. So it just seemed like last winter it was just constantly going to house fires. So maybe a dry year in 2012, we had a lot of brush fires. I don't know. That is the end of kind of what we had as far as an overview of what's going on. You know, as I explained to you as far as reporting the things, you guys are our eyes and ears. We're just a few, and we need everybody's help to be able to do the job that we do. We can't do it without your support. You know, we appreciate everybody's support and everything that they provide to us as a community. And we do have a great bunch of officers that love to serve and help out and be able to utilize their services to help you guys in any capacity. So we appreciate you as well.